So welcome everybody. This is the fourth part of Salima project's online info session. And today's topic is the custody of the children and from the viewpoint of Abducted Children NGO Finland. And just a reminder, there's another two coming next weekend on Saturday and Sunday. And today we have Hilla-Maria with us from Kaapatut Lapset, which is the Abducted Children organization. And I will give her the floor. I will stop sharing now my screen, Hilla, and you can start yours.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me well enough. Let me know if you don't.
Yes, we hear you.
Yes. Okay, just a second. Okay, so my today's topic is custody of children from Finnish perspective, according to the Finnish law. And yeah, I will speak about what belongs to the topic of custody in Finland, what are the tasks and duties of custodians, as well as from the perspective of my organization, Abducted Children Finland NGO, Kaapatut Lapset ry, as we work with the difficult international custody disputes and child abductions. So first of all, I will present our organization, which was founded in 1997. So we are almost 25 years old organization. We have three employees and many active volunteers that we are thankful for. Our aim is to help people everywhere in Finland, and also we are often contacted by Finnish people who live abroad. But our office is in Helsinki and many activities are based in Helsinki. We are part of different organizations, including the Federation of Mother and Child Homes and Shelters, Ensi- ja Turvakotien liitto, Federation or Union of Single Parent Families, Yhden vanhemman perheiden liitto, and Citizen Forum, kansalaisareena in Finland. Internationally, we cooperate with the organization Missing Children Europe and other organizations in different countries. And well, our main goal is to help and support families by helping parents to prevent international child abductions, helping them to return abducted children back to the country of Epartor, where they used to live, and provide information and peer support in difficult international custody disputes. So not only abductions, which is a big part of our work, but also difficult divorce situations that include children in Finland that are somehow international or involve different cultures. That is what we do. We organize events, groups, we provide one-to-one peer support, and we have at our office, we try to help from Monday to Friday, people who call us by giving advice. So those are some of our actions. Yes. Well, I want to start by speaking of custody according to law. This is from the Finnish Act on Child Custody and Rights of Access that was updated in 2019. I'm not sure if I should read it aloud, but I can start. Because it's quite interesting actually what is included in the custodian's tasks. And I think it differs between cultures or countries as well. Of course, there are similarities too. So the purpose of child custody is to ensure the well-being and balanced development of a child in accordance with the child's individual needs and wishes. Another purpose is to secure a close and affectionate relationship, especially between the child and his or her parents. Other relationships that are important to the child shall also be fostered, being sisters, brothers, siblings, also like, yeah, family members in general. A child shall be ensured good care and upbringing, as well as supervision and protection appropriate for his or her age and stage of development. A child should be brought up in a secure and stimulating environment, and he or she should receive an education that corresponds to his or her inclinations and wishes. A child shall be protected from all forms of physical and mental violence, maltreatment, and exploitation. A child shall be brought up with understanding, security, and affection. A child must not be subdued, corporally punished, or treated offensively in any other way. The growth of a child towards independence, responsibility, and adulthood shall be supported and encouraged. So this is what the first section of the Finnish law on child custody. So what is interesting, I took some main points that I would like to lift up from the whole law, not only from the first section, is, well, as you can see in the first section, the child's wishes are very important in Finland. They are mentioned twice in the very first section of the law. So even though the custodians decide and handle the child's affairs, such as education, religion, healthcare, residence, passport, hobbies, upbringing, language, finances, even though these are the things that the custodians decide upon, the child should be heard on his or her affairs. So this is something that was, I think, added, or it's more prominent now in the new 2019 law than what it was before. Yeah, so one shortly about words that I use word custodian. I could use the word guardian as well, and parental rights are also in the mix, but in Finland they are one and same actually. There are no custodians, are also the child's legal guardians, looking into his or her what is best for he or her. So I will use the word custodian in this presentation. So yeah, custodians decide about those child's big questions, so to say, the big things in the child's life. Custodians have rights to receive information from officials, for example, from school, daycare, healthcare. Yeah, those officials that handle the child's matters, only the custodians can receive information from them. Custodians have duties as well as rights. So their duties, for example, include to protect the child from physical and emotional violence and harm, which I mentioned earlier, to support the child's relationship to the other parent and other significant relationships. This is also very important in the updated law, that the parents should not only allow, but also support the child to maintain relationship to the other parents, even after divorce. And this is something interesting that also came up with the updated law, that the custodian's duty is to discuss with the child before making decisions about the child's life. The custodian should consider the child's views and tell the child about any decision regarding him or her. So I think this is interesting. The child's voice is in Finnish custody law very very like a high priority to hear what the child thinks and respect and consider their views. Of course, in the end, custodians do decide about these things, but they should always try to hear what the child thinks also. Of course, that depends on the child's age and maturity. So of course, you can hear a 3-year-old's views differently than a 12-year-old's. That is obvious. The child, however, has the right to know and spend time with their parent, even if this parent is not a custodian. That is something important, I thought. Decide if there are 2 custodians, both of them decide together about the child's affairs, but this does not include the small things that the parent does with the child when he or she is with their child. So the parent who is spending the time with the child at the moment can decide about daily matters such as food, clothing, who they meet, what they do during the time with them. So the decisions that belong to custody are the big ones that affect the child's future, even. As I mentioned, education, religion, healthcare, residence, passport or citizenship, hobbies, upbringing, language, being like the mother tongue of the child, and finances as well. So there are different types of custody in Finland, and I will mention I think most usual, I would say, or the ones that have to do with the parents. So joint custody means that both parents or both custodians make all the big decisions together about the child's. One cannot make any changes alone. If you would like to change the child's school, you would have to decide about it together, or at least the other person would have to agree to it. Joint custody is most common, I think, preferred after divorce if parents can somehow cooperate. I don't have statistics about it, but I would say that there have to be some severe reasons if the parents are ordered to have other type of custody than joint custody. Yeah, and of course, during the family life, before separation, usually children are in the parents' joint custody. If they are born in marriage, they will automatically be in the parents' joint custody, and also in when the parents are not married but live together. I don't remember the name of that union, but anyway, also in those cases, often the children are in joint custody. So if those parents, married or not, then separate, the joint custody will go on unless changes are made at social services or courts. Okay. Then there is limited joint custody, which means that joint custody still stands, but the tasks between custodians are divided. There is like a division of tasks between the custodians. Usually it means that maybe the other can have more power on making decisions, and the other one, there are only some things that they will decide together. For example, both are custodians, but one may decide about the child's education and hobbies. These kind of decisions can be confirmed in the social services or at court, but the basis of the decision, how the tasks are divided, should always be in the child's best interest. So the division of tasks should somehow profit the child to make his or her life easier, or make things like to make things easier for the child. That would be the basis of the decision. For example, if other parents is not participating in things that include education, then it could be decided that one parent can decide on educational questions. And also if there are some things, for example, in our cases, when we meet international families, it can be important that even though the other parent could decide about everything else, it might be important that she or he cannot decide alone about religion or the country of residence or the citizenship of the child. So these questions then can then be left so that the custodians will decide about those together and the other one can decide everything else. Yes. And then we have sole custody. In contrast to joint custody, the sole custodian can make all the decisions alone and also is the only person who has right to receive information from officials about the child. There are exceptions. It's possible to have sole custody with the right to receive information from officials, so that even though the sole custodian can make all the decisions, the parent who is not a custodian can still receive information from the officials, for example, from school. This can sometimes help the parent feel included in the child's life, even though they are not custodians anymore. But yes, so basically there are two categories, joint custody and sole custody, with some adjustments, I would say. Do you have any questions about what I have said until now? No. Okay. Then I'm including some frequently asked questions. I thought it would be nice to look at some questions that often are asked from us, because often people share these questions. And if you have been thinking of one of these, then you'll know that you are not the only one. One very often asked question is about holidays, because of course, actually these are in the wrong place. I'm sorry, Janika can cut this part out and I will jump to abductions and then I will come back to the frequently asked questions, because I realize this can't be understood if I start with them now. So I will then move on to child abduction. Yeah, so as I said, custodians decide together about the child's affairs and questions about the child, also including where the child should live. So one custodian cannot move to another country without the other custodian's permission, because they have to decide together. So if the child is taken from his or her country of residence and not returned, that might be a child abduction. Of course, a sole custodian can decide about a place of residence alone. So even if a sole custodian moves away from a country, relocates, even if there are visitations with the other parents that are disturbed by the relocation, that is not an abduction. It's all about if the person is a sole custodian or if they have joint custody. So I will then look into the topic of child abduction in more detail. And this is from Finnish criminal law. I tried to make it more readable than it's in the law. So I will go through the details of what actually is a child abduction. to start, a child abduction is a criminal offense in Finland, and one can get maximum of 2 years prison sentence if one commits this kind of crime, but that is not so often the case. Usually, often cases are solved without criminal proceedings, and often if there is a punishment, it's a fine or a shorter sentence. So if we speak about child abduction, it only has to do with children under 16 years old. So child abduction might be the case if the child is under 16 years old. She or he is taken from the country of habitual residence or not returned to this country after, for example, a holiday. And by this removal from the country, the custody rights have been violated. So there is another custodian in the picture. And the custodian whose rights have been violated has or would have exercised his or her rights. And so that means that the person is not only legally a custodian, but they have met with the child or participated in taking care of the child's things before the child was taken away. So if there have been no meetings in years, no contact with the parent and child, so in that case, even if the person is a custodian by law, it may not be a child abduction if he or she has not been in contact with the child before the child was taken away. All this will be then considered in the process of estimating if the child should return. So I was mentioning the process of return. There are official procedures on how to return the child, and those are based on the Hague Convention, which Finland is part of, amongst with many other countries. But not all countries are part of this convention, so with some countries there are no official ways to return the children. And in those cases, it's between the parents to agree on return, or the parent can go to court in the country where the child has been taken to. This is such a long topic. I will not go into much detail about it today. What is Hague Convention and how does it affect? That's the most important part, is that it's binding to many countries, almost 100 in the world, and it's designed to be an effective tool to return the child to their country of origin, the country of habitual residence, where the child has all the where the child's life is and has been, so that all the decisions about the child's future would be made in that country. So if you need any more information about the Hague Convention, you can contact us. We will be happy to tell you more, or you will find information online. Here we have, unfortunately, in Finnish, some of the countries that are part of the Hague Convention, and also the convention is like Finland and these countries have a mutual agreement about returning children, because when a country joins the convention, the other countries have to accept. So one country might be joining, but it has to wait for the other countries to accept. So these countries are accepted by Finland and vice versa. So if a child is taken to one of these countries, then the Hague Convention procedures can be followed. yeah, so most European countries, all European countries are part of the convention, some African countries, but definitely not all, not many, and not the ones that Finnish people have families in or with. So also of Asian countries, there are Thailand, for example, that is part of the convention, but many countries also not, for example, China. Yeah, so unfortunately, this list is in Finnish, but it can be found online with more detail in English, of course. Okay. So, okay, then at Kaapatut Lapset, Abducted Children Finland, we have made this list of sites that can be seen before abduction, signs of threat of abduction. So I will go shortly through these. It's a long list and it can be found on our website, and we are also happy to give more information about it. So I will just go through this. So these are things that can, in some cases, be like red flags, warning signs of child abduction. Well, first of all, if the parent has tried to abduct the child or has threatened to do so, that is, of course, a big sign. Or the parent takes for granted that the child belongs to him or her and their family and does not need the other parent. That is the attitude of owning the child, can also be a sign. The parents in these cases often have serious disagreements about the matters that concern the child. Again, those so-called big questions that belong to custody, being education, religion, healthcare, hobbies, just in the upbringing in general, how to bring up the child. There has been physical or emotional domestic violence in the family, persecution or stalking or mistreatment of the child. So these kind of difficulties in family life can also speak of threat of abduction, because abduction also is in a way a form of domestic violence. The parent doesn't have any other connections to Finland or the country where they live except the child. They are not well integrated. So yeah, I always like to think, if you live in a country where you have your family and you are faced with divorce and you don't have friends, work, or other things that make you feel included in the country, it can, of course, feel like the divorce is something that can make you feel like you have nothing left in the country except your child, and that may be a motivation to take the child to somewhere else. But still, it's not okay to do so. Then there are some practical signs. For example, the parent applies for travel documents, for example, a passport, visa for the child, even though there is nothing agreed about traveling anywhere. The parent doesn't respect decisions made by Finnish authorities about the child custody, maintenance, and visitation rights. So there may be an agreement or a court order, but the parent doesn't follow it or doesn't feel like there is any need to respect it. The parent aims to get the child's documents, for example, birth, health, or school documents, all kinds of documentation about the child, and this includes the travel documents, of course, also. Then this is an interesting one, number 8. The parent starts suddenly to teach their own language and culture to the child, even though they haven't considered it important before. I've had a commentary once about this specific criteria that the person who asked this question, he said, well, in divorce, it can be the first time the parent can actually teach their own language and culture to the child. So yeah, separation can be, I think, it can be a new beginning in a way in parenting also, so that the parent can find it more important to speak their own language and teach the child their own culture, even like without any risk for child abduction, just because he or she has changed their views about the importance of this. However, if this, I think as a parent, you'll have the gut feeling about if there is something else linked to this newfound interest or not. So yeah, so I would say if it's combined with the other signs on the list, then maybe it's a source for worry, but not alone. Yeah, number 9, more practical things, practical signs. The parent hides or destroys their own documents or shows false documents. Yeah, that is suspicious. The parent converts their assets to cash and transfers it to another country. Yeah. The parent abandons the permanent apartment or work or loses them. I would say these two together, moving one's assets to another country and abandoning any permanent housing or work or educational contacts they have in the country. That would maybe make you think that the person is preparing to move. So if there is no talk about moving, then there can be some question marks. Then why is the person doing so? And also if the parents residence permit is about to change, they are going to get a refusal of entry, their citizenship application is rejected, or they don't even want to apply for that, although there have been no intentions to move to another country or no agreement about that. So yeah, I would summarize these so that if it seems the parent is preparing to move, not only in Finland, but to another country, if he or she makes preparations to move, for example, by selling their things and abandons their apartments, that is one sign. Then the difficulties in family life before divorce are one sign as well. And yeah, and changes in behavior in general. If there are some big changes in the parent's behavior, that is a sign, I would say also. And last, I would say the sign that was first, the parent has tried or threatened to abduct the child and or takes for granted that the child belongs to them. That is, I think, the most important one to consider. So the more criteria met from this list, the more there should be need for seeking help and advice. So there is no need to panic, but that is if you find that some of these signs are valid in your situation, then you might want to find out about what kind of preventive measures can be taken and where to find help. Yes. Oh, okay. I had more, but I see I have lost it. Okay, then we will go to these frequently asked questions that I was going to go to before. So now it's time for them. But if you have any questions, I can take those now.
There is no hands up or anything, and you can also write into the chat if you want to say something, or if you want to ask. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so as I said, I picked up some frequently asked questions to go through. Yeah, and I think after we have gone through the questions about abduction, this will be more understandable now. So to start, can I go on a holiday abroad with my child when we have joint custody, but the other parent is not coming with? So this is actually not the easiest question. You would think the answer is yes or no, but it's not. I would say that it is quite usual to travel with the child during one's assigned time with the child. So when parents have a visitation agreement or agreement about the contact with the other parent, or a court order about the contact, then during those times when the parent is supposed to be with the child, for example, in the weekends, it's usual to travel, for example, for a weekend trip somewhere nearby, but taking a child abroad without the other custodian's consent is not permitted. So there is like usually you can travel, but you are not allowed to do so if the other custodian doesn't accept. So what this means practically, it is recommended that the other custodian should be informed about a trip, and you might need a written travel permit from the other custodian. Me, myself, I recommend to have it always, but it varies between countries and airlines and ship companies, what kind of, how the permit should look like and what it should include. Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, there's one question. Harry, please.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, I think you just kind of said then it depends on the airline about the written permit, but like if the other parent did say, no, you can't travel, are there sort of legal proceedings you can take to challenge that? Or is there no, if the other parent says, no, you can't take them, you can't question it, that's their decision, is it? Or
yeah, surely you can question it, but there is no quick way to do it. Yeah, so basically it would be like you would try to negotiate with the other parents, or in the end you could try to apply in court that you have the right to travel so and so during a year. Those kind of court orders, they are many in international families, that they state when the travels can happen. And yeah, if there has been like disagreement about traveling, then the court can give an order about how the parent can travel, not probably on one trip. That is also possible, but usually like how the trip should be arranged. And the other parents will have to then give the passports.
And I think it's good to mention here that it's so important to go through all these possibilities when you are actually making the first agreement. When you are like divorced, and then you have to make the agreement for the children about meeting the other parent and this financial agreement, that you think about also this, this can also be written down in the original agreement, how the other parent can travel, or can the children travel with the other parent freely and how and whatever. So those things can also be added into that contract, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you could you take the like say lastenvalvoja form like document that you receive with the custody agreements, and if it's stated there that the other parent, one parent can take them abroad freely and it's agreed by both parents, like is it worth taking that as well on holiday? Because I always worry when I take the children to England. I know it's not far, but I mean, I remember I've been stopped going into England when I actually wasn't married at the time to my ex-husband, and I had a different surname to my children, and I got stopped entering England, and they were like, you're not their mother. And I was like, I am, they just have a different surname. So yeah, it's all those kind of like those worries when you take your children abroad after a divorce. Is quite concerning, but yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think if it's made at lastenvalvoja, of course you would have to translate it to English officially, but unless it's made in English originally, of course. But I think, yeah, that would work at least. But the thing is, there are different rules in different countries. So some countries are very, very specific about how it should look like. But yeah, I think it would be at least wise to take it with you, the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
But as Janika said, it's a good idea to prepare beforehand. And if you know traveling is important in your family, then it's good to speak about it when you make the agreement about the children's visitations. So yeah. But like basically it's seen as a good thing. If there is no risk of abduction, it is seen as a good thing that the child can travel with the parents. But yeah, it's good to also prepare by getting these permits and informing the other custodian about it. Then we have frequently asked questions number 2. We have endless disagreements with my ex-spouse about child custody. What can I do? This is a basic answer. There are, of course, situation-specific answers to every family, but these are some of the first things that come to mind. So in Finland, there are several services that aim to help parents to agree about the child's affairs. These include lastenvalvoja, that we already mentioned. In English, it's child welfare officer or supervisor, depending on the translation that you are looking at. But everyone says lastenvalvoja. They work in social services in cities and municipalities, mediation in family matters, and expert-assisted mediation in court. Lastenvalvoja, family mediation in social services, those are free of charge, as well as creating a parenting plan can be done in many social services. So you can get help from social services to create a parenting plan. It's kind of a form to fill for the parents, and it can be found also in English. I didn't put a link, but I can send it to Janika. Maybe you can put it in the post or anything. So yeah, these are some things that can help in the early stages of having many disagreements. But if the disagreements continue, you can seek for a court decision about the child's custody, residence, and visitation rights. And of course, this is always something I like to mention, disagreements between parents can be stressful for you as a parent, so don't forget to find peer support and take care of yourself. Practice self-care during these times. I think this is something we will talk more about next week when we have our divorce-themed session, so I will not go into detail about these. Yeah. So next week we will also, I think, talk about the different agreements that can be made and what happens at lastenvalvoja and so on.
That's a good idea. Yes.
Yeah. Then another question we often get. Yeah, I'm afraid that the other parent might take our child to their home country, and I might not see my child again. What should I do to prevent it? Again, there is no one rule how to prevent child abduction, but there are different actions you can take to prevent it. Depending on the urgency of the situation, you can, for example, contact police in order to make a preventive announcement of threat of abduction, or you can inform the child protection. It's also wise to have a confirmed enforceable visitation and custodianship arrangements. That sounds funny, but yeah, to have like an agreement or a court order about how the child should spend time with the other parents. And also you can apply for supervised visits for the parent and child if there is, well, for different reasons, if there is violence or drugs or anything in the family, but also if there is a threat of abduction and it can be proved, then you can apply for supervised visits based on that. Also, a Finnish passport for the child can only be admitted if the both custodians agree on it. So you can inform the police that you do not consent to your child getting a new passport if your child is a Finnish citizen, of course. And an existing passport can be cancelled, but if you request that, the child's other custodian will be informed and heard about this. So these are just some things that can be done to prevent child abduction. But again, this is what my organization does. You can contact us in your own situation, and then we will think what is the best way to proceed in your case, because every family is different. Yes, then our last frequently asked question, which is, yeah, I'm divorcing and I don't see a future for myself and my child in Finland. I would rather return with my child to my family in country X. I don't know. What can I do? So if your child is in joint custody and you can, yeah, then you can't relocate without the other custodian's consent. If you do, you might end up committing a crime called child abduction. And depending on international legislation, your child might face a forced return to Finland and to the other parent's care. Of course, as I said, there are countries that don't have that kind of agreement with Finland, that are not part of the Hague Convention. But even if there is no legislation about returning the child to Finland, taking a child from his or her place of habitual residence, her home, so to say, can be traumatic. It can and will break the child's important social structures and relationships and harm the child's sense of security. So to remove a child surprisingly from what she or he is used to is not recommendable, even if there are no legal consequences about it. And it has been proved in international research that child abduction is harmful for all parties in question, to the child, most importantly, but also to both parents, the one who is left behind and the one who has taken the child. It's very stressful for everyone. So what can you do if you still feel like you would like to relocate, but you want to do it legally and with good planning? Then you can negotiate, of course, with the other parents, and you can get help for that from mediation, keeping in mind the importance of the child's relationship to the other parent, even after relocation. So when you negotiate about this, it's wise to also talk about how the child will communicate with the other parents, and to, like, if possible, to show the other parent that you don't want to cut the contact, but you just want, like, yeah, to think of the child's best interest in this case. And if the negotiations don't provide fruitful, then you can apply for permission to relocate from the district courts. And again, the child's best interest will be considered. So this is not to say that it's for sure if you apply, you get the permission, but that is the way to proceed legally. In some cases, there are reasons to make a decision that the child can move to another country with the other parents. But then it's important to ensure that the contact with the other parents that stays will be held, and the child will be taken in a safe manner. Yes. So I think this was all for my presentation. Yeah. Any more questions, comments?
Now you can just open your mic if you have something that you want to comment or ask. I think the topic is very, very important, especially with the number of, mixed culture families in Finland, or even if they are both from the same country. This is not so clear, even to the Finnish people. Kari, I'll let you have it in a second. And I think this is something that should be maybe, spoken about more, so that it would be clear, so that people would understand, more about how things actually go and how they work. I think that people don't necessarily want to commit a crime. That's not in their agenda, but they just want to think that they know best. Of course, every parent want to think that they know the best, but you have to think about the law, and that in this country the child really comes first. So this is something to keep in mind. Kari, please.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important discussion, and I also feel like when you come to Finland or any country, like as an immigrant, and you're from your partner's from, say, a different culture, but you need to, like, I think there needs to be more education to those immigrants that, if you do end up getting a divorce, that you won't be allowed to return home easily. You're basically, as they say, like, stuck in that country with your children, for your children. And I think, like, I don't know, just maybe more awareness for that is needed in Finland. But another question I had was, like, how many children are, like, annually abducted, like, in Finland? Are there any statistics on it?
Well, it varies, of course. I would say there are abductions to and from Finland, first of all. So from Finland, it's about 20 children in a year, but that changes yearly, of course. And from then to Finland, around 10. But then also there are cases that continue from earlier years. So in a year, approximately 50 children are touched by abduction, meaning that they are in the process of abduction or they have been abducted during that year. So it's not a great many, but each and everyone is one too many. Because these things can be prevented also by, as you said, by informing beforehand in the early phase of the family life, also when the family plans where they live, and it would be good to know these things beforehand. We often get calls from Finnish parents who live abroad, who are faced with the exactly same question. They have moved abroad, and when the divorce comes or the family problems start, they would like to return to Finland, and they find out that it's not possible legally to return. So yeah, I agree with you
Yeah, it's not so easy when or straightforward when after this happy family and everything falls down, and then you have to stop thinking that, you know, well, what about the law? And then you might end up in serious problems if you don't know the, you know, rules. And like you said, that, you know, each country have their own specific rules, for example, about the traveling, who accepts what. This kind of should be the same or at least similar in countries that, you know, they would all accept, you know, like the form would be like very similar or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we can't do anything about that.
Yeah, well, maybe we can. We have to
We'll try.
be very active. But
Yes.
yeah, it's and I would like to advertise at the same time that I have recently been to this international family mediator, cross-border family mediator training. And one thing that surprised me in the training was that there are, even in EU, where most of the participants came from, there are so many different rules and attitudes about children after divorce. So even in EU, that you would think it's quite similar between countries, there are differences culturally and in the legislation. So yeah.
Okay, Carrie.
Sorry, I got another question. No, I was just wondering, like, is it the age of 15 when a child can kind of decide if they would like to, say, if the mother wants to move and both children are over 15, that she wanted to move back to her home country, is it then like possible? Like, is it then that the child gets to make that decision, or does the child need to be of full age, like 18, or does it also depend on the recipient country, if that's the right word?
I think decision, like if you would imagine this situation happens in Finland, decision about whether or not to relocate happens in Finland. So it would go according to the Finnish law in here. And well, for a 15-year-old, their opinions would definitely be heard in Finland, as it says in the law about custody, that even younger children should be heard. So I think the children, even at 15 years, they cannot decide. It's always the parents or in the end court that decides, but they would be heard. And I would say it would be likely that their wishes would be respected if they like are on like yeah I think at 15 they will be heard quite well. But of course, in the end, like then the parents would agree about it based on the children's views and sign it off at lastenvalvoja, or one would go to court, and in that process, children would be heard.
Okay, so there's no like set age where a child can decide what country they live in. It's completely, you know, they take the child into consideration, but it's on the child's well-being. I guess that's the priority.
Yeah, that's what I know. Of course, there is some small detail in the law about the age when the child can actually change his or her address, but I think that is like, I'm not sure about that, and I think it's only in Finland. So yeah, I would say it goes according to the normal process.
Yeah, I think it's you know, sometimes, you know, the age is quite low, but sometimes it's higher, and I think it also depends on the matter and like the development of the child, like what you take into consideration. And also I think it's about who's your judge. If you go to court, you know, some, you know, judges find other things important and the other find some other things important. So it's, you know, not so straightforward about these matters, but like by law, the child's opinion in each matter concerning their own lives should be taken into consideration. So yeah.
And the older the child, the heavier the weight of his or her word. So yeah, as far as I know, teenagers or children who are closer to being 18, they will be heard quite well. And they are able to also speak of their wishes in the way that the social services can also understand.
Yes, thank you for the questions, and thank you, Hilla. Is there anybody who wants to say something still? Not at the moment. So I think I will now say thank you for everybody for joining, especially to Hilla. And we will see Hilla again next Sunday.
Yes.
and then we will talk a little bit more detailing things about the divorce process and the contracts and such. And we will also have Nora there on Sunday. So thank you all, and I will post this online shortly, and let's hope other people will also see it. And yes, one thing, there is again this link to the feedback in the chat. Please fill it up, and if you now can't do it, I can send you the link a bit later, but it's important for us to get the feedback from this session. Nora is saying thank you so much, Hilla and Janika. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So I hope I will see you all next week again, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yes.
Thank you all. I will now stop the recording once I find it. I think you have to stop.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And in here, no. Here.